Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's 1 minute into the afternoon on the 9th of November. And as part of the career service at Glasgow, part of our events for COP26, I'm really delighted to just host this webinar on sustainability is all our jobs. I'm delighted to have three fantastic contributors to this panel session, but I'll introduce them in a minute. Before I do that, I just want to say to you all, thanks for coming. We can't see you because it's a webinar format and we can't hear you, but we are really, really keen that you give us your questions. So after we've introduced the panel, we'll be open the floor open to yourself. So it's your session. So please get involved and ask as many questions as you would like, but please do that through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, not the chat, because we won't be looking at the chat, but we will see them in the Q&A. So if you do that, that would be absolutely fantastic. So just to start then, I think I'm the careers manager for science at the University of Glasgow. And I think, careers managers talk a lot about making informed choices. Often we'll talk about the importance of getting informed about jobs and what the roles require. We also talk a lot about how to become more self-aware so that you can be sure that you'll have the skills to do the job and the job will give you what you want out of a job. And you've got the potential to develop in the job as you go forward. And the labour market is changing more rapidly than it's ever changed. I think that's absolutely certain and true. And we're all aware of some of the changes that are driving that. We've got IT, AI, robotics, and they're potentially going to make huge changes to the future and the labour market. But we're maybe a bit less aware of just how vital the move to a more sustainable future will impact on the future jobs. COP26 has obviously thrown all these issues into focus and brought them to the forefront of our attention. But looking forward, I think if we're going to tackle climate change, it's going to mean big changes to the way that we work and going forward. And sustainability is going to impact all of our future jobs, I think. But I'm not going to talk about that because we've got three experts that are going to talk about that as we go through. So as I said, we've assembled a really brilliant panel of experts to share their knowledge and insights with you today as far as they're able to. So we hope this session, as I said, will be led by you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce our three panel members, and they're going to speak for just a couple of minutes on their role and sustainability, and then we'll open the floor open. So I'll introduce them just now. We've got Professor Jaime Toney, who from any of you from Glasgow probably know her. She's an environmental and climate scientist who uses organic geochemistry. If this is wrong, Jamie, just interrupt me, but uses organic geochemistry as a tool to understand how the Earth system responds to climate change and what drives climate change. She's director of the Centre for Sustainable Solutions and Professor of Environmental and Climate Science at the University of Glasgow. So welcome to you, Jamie. Thank you very much. As well as Jamie, we've got Dr. Nicola Crawford, who's Director of Developing the Young Workforce Glasgow from Glasgow Chamber of Commerce. And Nicola's got over 20 years experience in the education sector, and her passion for empowering people and equality fits perfectly with the role that she's in just now. She's been pioneering throughout her career, creating and leading on bespoke programmes, allowing access for all and to specifically meet the needs of industry. Nicola holds a doctorate in analytical chemistry from Strathclyde University and also is a chartered manager, and she's a member of the Glasgow Employer and Skills Board. So thank you for coming along, Nicola. You've been at one or two of our events. It's great to have you back. And we've also got Elaine Ellis, who's Skills Planning Manager for Skills Development Scotland. And Elaine's role is to manage Skill Development Scotland's relationship with the construction sector and related industries, including forestry. And increasingly important, she's supporting delivery of the Climate Emergency Skills Action Plan. So her goal is to work in collaboration with industry, the Scottish Government and other public agencies to support skills development. So I think you can agree we've got three fantastic contributors who've got a very relevant background. I mean, it's really interesting to see you because about many years ago, about 40 years ago, nearly, I graduated with a degree in environmental chemistry, which I've forgotten most of, but I still do care about it. And so I'm really looking forward to this session myself personally. And I hope you all are too, who are here today. So without further ado, I would just like to ask each of our panel members to introduce themselves and just give us a a little insight into how the issue of sustainability is affecting the way we work and how this might continue in the future. And I haven't even agreed on order with any of them, so that's really bad, very bad of me. I'm sorry. So I'll just go for the obvious alphabetical one then to begin with. And if I can get that right, I think that means that Elaine is probably first. So Elaine, would you like to just give us a few words about your role in sustainability?
Absolutely. So thanks for having me there today. So name's Elaine Ellis and Skills Planning Manager at SDS, but in practice we're kind of informally known as sector managers. So it is my job to link at a strategic level with the sector, the construction sector in particular, but also forestry, and be that two-way link between the sectors and Skills Development Scotland. I've only been at SDS for 3 years, and previous to working at SDS, I used to work, I was the sort of last job with Skills and Qualifications Manager at Select, where I was working with the electricians. So I've been around the construction sector for quite a long time now. And what I will, certainly within SDS, we have restructured a little bit. So we have a new Team Climate Emergency, and myself and a couple of other sector managers have been pulled into that team. In terms of sustainability, there has been a huge step change within the industry on how much focus there is on sustainability and also on the sort of whole green skills, low carbon environment. Certainly even just a couple of years ago, although it was there, I would have said it was very much in the background, and it was sort of something that there was a light touch around renewables, but it was very light touch. There was a focus on around waste management and how to sort of reuse materials. But I would have said that was certainly in a working level was as far as it went. But it started to change. And how it has changed, certainly in terms of discussion, is that I would say this is now a number one issue, and not just because we have COP on, but it's absolutely is a number one issue. It's very closely tied into the whole digital construction, everything from data, but also to how we build buildings. There is now starting to be real discussion around materials that we use, both in terms of using natural materials and changing materials, but also the technology that you can have around materials and concept like digital twins. It's started to become sort of conversations there. But I think where we are certainly is how we are going to take that through construction industry, which is extremely vast, from very big multinational companies who have very skilled technical people right through the supply chain down to sort of working with the SMEs and the micro contractors that dominate. But that is where we're at. But certainly right now, I would say it's the biggest challenge, and it has not been before. So we're at a very interesting time. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Elaine. That's really interesting. And yeah, I was just, my mind was wandering as you were talking there about just how things have changed, even since I've been a careers advisor. And you're right, it's now at the forefront. And it should have been before, but it now is, which is fantastic. Okay, thanks very much for that. So folks, I don't see any questions yet, so come on, get them coming while we're talking. Jamie, could you possibly just unmute yourself and give us a few words as well, please? That'd be fantastic.
Hi, yeah, and I'm really happy to be here. As Stephen said in his introduction, I am a professor in geosciences, and from that side, just from a discipline, geosciences is changing dramatically. The move away from oil and gas, and thinking about, with all the different kinds of products that are coming up, electric cars, the kind of minerals and various things that we need to source. We're no longer looking at just extracting, but also thinking about how we do this sustainably, how we move to a circular economy and reuse and things like that. So from a discipline-specific context, the way in which we're training our students to actually think sustainably for the future has been changing quite a lot. But the other role that I have is I'm the director for the Center for Sustainable Solutions. And through that, we've been looking a lot at how education is changing in order to kind of meet the needs for industry. And in particular, we're running a couple of courses in the upskilling program. So this is where students who aren't necessarily traditional undergraduate students with the university or traditional master students can come in and get new skills. So we're seeing, we currently run a climate and carbon literacy course. And this is around people who are in the workplace and want to, reskill and learn about climate change, who want to be able to make change within their own workplace and within their own environment. And because we've been running this over the past year or so, we actually see a number of people who are out of work or who have been on furlough because of COVID who are taking this. And there's a really interesting two-way exchange of information. So on the one hand, we're kind of teaching people that even though, you know, we look at climate change as being a big complex problem, how do you actually, as an individual in a workplace, actually do something about that? So we've been working with individuals to think about ways that they can calculate and create a carbon audit, either for their organization or for their household or within their own lives, and how they can look at the aspects there that are kind of out of kilter where they can actually make change. And so it's been really fantastic interacting with this sort of different demographic of students than we typically interact with. And I think the more we do that, the more we see that people are really keen to engage with sustainability and with climate change. They just need maybe a few pointers on how to move forward. And we're also seeing that the peer-to-peer learning that we have within these courses is really helpful as well. Just interacting with people with different perspectives is a really positive thing. And I've been really energized in terms of taking these upskilling courses forward. But it's certainly, when we think about, you know, reskilling the workforce and things like that, we need to think about education in a different way as well, and think about the lifelong learners. There was a panel discussion last week that Nicola was part of as well, and one of the panelists pointed out that the 8-year-olds today are potentially their life expectancy is about 105 years. So people of the future might be working well into their 80s, and so wow, you know, might want to change career paths along the way and things like that as well. So I think as we start to think about the future, there's a potential for it to look quite different, and for us to kind of envision what that might look like.
Mm-hmm. So, that's really interesting.
I'll leave it there.
That's brilliant. Thank you. It sounds to me, if I could use a chemical analogy, but I think your course is a catalyst for change. If you've got all these different people coming in and doing that and thinking of the future. If you're going to live till 105, then probably by then the pension age will be 103, but hopefully not. So yeah, we will have longer working lives. Okay, Nicola, it'd be great if I could just introduce you again. If you could just give us a little 2 minutes again along the same lines, that'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Nicola and I work, I'm the director and I lead developing young workforce and for Glasgow within Glasgow's Chamber of Commerce. And I guess my main role is bringing industry into education, into the school sector, to influence and shape the curriculum to what industry needs. And over the last couple of years, we have been really focused on digital. We've brought digital experts into every school to work beside the computer teachers to ensure that their relevancy and to bring the curriculum really up to date to life. And obviously now we've created a project called My Climate Path, which is the COP26 education legacy, which is business driven, again, curricular shift into our young people's education, and a link with Circular Glasgow, because within the Chamber of Commerce we've got developing a workforce, we've also got Circular Glasgow, and taking on board what Elaine was talking about, the Climate Emergency Skills and Action Plan. We put some things into place that are going to support our young people moving into these roles that are absolutely needed across each sector, and not just the obvious roles that people understand and know in the renewable sector, and it's in every sector. It's understanding now in finance, if you're working, if that's what you want to do, how do you become the sustainable finance expert in your organisation? And a big part of what we've done just over the last few months is we've looked and put a call to action to business because business, from their perspective, are saying, well, the skills that we're looking for, they don't exist exactly. That there's not been training, but I think COVID has put us all into a fantastic position of we can innovate, and we're used to some sort of change, and we're aware of that. So they're looking at a different way of working with our young people for different skill sets, and the main skill sets that they're looking for when we're coming forward, we're looking at people as, of course, knowledge and ability to learn, but that innovative sort of state of mind, like being very curious and using data to make your analysis. So we've brought, again, sustainability experts And that's across sector, so that we've got one match per school across the whole of Glasgow region. So that's Lanarkshire and Renfrewshire. There's over 100 schools, and we're still looking for more to come in. And that person will bring to life to our young people what's going on in their sector. What does it look like? What are these new roles looking like? And what I was really keen to do was ensure there was tangible work experience aligned with every company, which has happened. So over 100 work experience places towards sustainability, and then looking at working with other key partners, because it's a benefit for both the students and obviously the economy and the business. The business are shifting as quick as the students are having to shift, and businesses that are not in the circular field already or in the sustainable field are having to do quite a large shift on their own. And our young people and our graduates are the people that are going to really help shift that innovation. So I wanted to put that out to you that, you know, the business community are looking for you, and people that have passion, want to make a difference. And it's not just in the sectors that you would imagine, it's in every role. They're looking for you to think about your procurement in an ethical way, finance. So it's been really interesting working with business. And over the COVID sort of time, we set up our Kickstart Gateway, looking for people for employment. We've got 900 people in employment from Glasgow, from graduates to people with no experience, into roles. That's been a really interesting learning for me and the team of what is it people are looking for. And the biggest thing they're looking for is that understanding of others, that ability to be curious, that ability to stand up and think that's not okay, not to be able to speak out, and utilising your experience you've had throughout your university career, of everything you've learned, and bringing that to the forefront. And that for me is quite revolutionary, because that's seen beyond your degree, it's seen beyond, it's your skills aligned with what's needed for supreme change. I don't know if that's right. Sorry, that's enough for me.
Thanks very much, Nicola. That's really interesting from all of you, really fantastic. And as a careers advisor, I'm quite aware of the changing world of work. Well, not aware of it as I should be probably, but it's changing more rapidly than ever. In fact, 65% apparently of all the children at primary school now will end up doing a job that doesn't yet exist. And that's the rate of change in the work. And we've just heard a bit about that from our three speakers. I don't see any questions here at all yet in our Q&A. So that's slightly worrying, because it's your session. So please come on, give us some questions. Don't be shy. If you've got three really amazing experts here, and it'd be a shame not to get the best out of the session, which means asking questions. I would say, sorry, the upskilling courses that you're talking about there, a few of us and our team took them on from the Glasgow Uni. I really enjoyed them, because we're not, you don't need to be an expert to come into this, and I think that's really important, that no matter what your background is, then step into it. And what you were talking about, I find them incredibly useful, and really well organised, and for learners. I just wanted to say that as well. A few in the chamber have actually done that from your centre. Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting, there's the World Economic Forum a couple of years ago released a list of 10 skills, which I don't have in front of me. I will get them in a minute or two while we're speaking. But top skills there was that cognitive flexibility, that ability to apply, the fact that you can think and you're curious to different scenarios. And I think for everybody now, one thing for all the audience, for all the students that are there, when I started work in higher education, which is a long time ago, that's I've got no hair, etc., about 40% of all the vacancies said that you could apply with any degree discipline. And that percentage now is about 65%. So what's happening is employers are much more interested in what you are able to do, how you're able to think, how you're able to problem solve, how you're able to communicate. As Nicola said, if you see something and you think something could be done differently, you've got the guts to just talk about that, ask the right questions, and make change. And if you do that, then that's what we're looking for. And the subject of your degree maybe isn't quite as important as you maybe thought. Yeah, Elaine, you've got your hand up there.
I was just going to say what you were describing there, certainly within SDS, we've kind of coined those skills under the banner of meta skills. So we've started to speak about exactly those type of skills and meta skills, and those being really, really critical as we move forward. And it is those attitudes and those sort of human skills, for want of a better word, that just can't be easily replaced, as we move into increased sort of automative world. And just one other point, I think sustainability is absolutely going to be heart of so many jobs, but very closely linked to sustainability is all those sort of jobs as we move towards low carbon and as we make the changes we need in society to move towards a low carbon. So there's a lot of jobs that are going to, that you would not traditionally see as being within that space will be moving in, and construction being a great example, when there'll be so many jobs that will start to move into that space that traditionally certainly wouldn't have been.
Brilliant. Jamie, do you want to say something as well? Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, from the center's perspective too, is we've been doing a lot of work with various companies in the private sector, and what we're seeing is that in the past there was this CSR, this corporate social responsibility, that a lot of the companies themselves, they wanted to do the right thing, and so they did that. But now we hear a lot about this terminology ESG, which is the environmental social governance. And what that's about is that, consumers, if they're buying products from companies, or investors who are investing in companies and things like that, are looking that the companies are doing the right thing. And part of that, that kind of doing the right thing now is very much around the sustainability agenda. And what we're seeing from, the private sector and the companies that we've been working with is that they're really wanting to learn from our students going in as well. The people who are in leadership positions today within companies didn't, as you've said too, is they didn't have the same sort of training around climate change or around sustainability. So they're really looking at, young people coming into the workplace who can communicate, what's important and what's the right thing to be doing in this space. So it's a really excellent opportunity, a really interesting time, I think, to be going out into that sort of job market.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jamie. Well, thankfully, we're getting some questions, which is fantastic as well. So an anonymous attendee, but if you're obviously, that's fine, you can be anonymous. What's the biggest thing that the government can do to make more green jobs? I don't know if that's more of an Elaine issue, or maybe a Nicola, I don't know, but all of you can answer that. So government, and by that I probably mean Scottish government as well as other governments. So yeah, feel free to answer that one, folks.
Yeah, no, I mean, certainly in terms of green jobs, a lot of the policy that the government is driving forward in terms of the climate emergency, so the climate action plan, will drive jobs moving forward. So what that they'll do, for example, around housing, and as they sort of make decisions around how we're going to heat our homes and as we're going to decarbonise heat, that will definitely create jobs and move into that space. As there'll be policies around, forestry, around woods, around the peatlands, again, that will sort of move in and drive jobs into that space. And yeah, it will be, there's probably more examples here. I'm extremely conscious I'm sort of construction and forestry and a bit biased with my examples, but government, where the policy drives change, that in time will drive jobs. So it's connecting those two areas together, and there's no question that as the policy regulations move in that direction, and as policy becomes sort of, I guess, it gets the timeline associated with it, more and more jobs will move into that space. And again, transport, there, for one other example that's not an immediate field, but certainly in transport as well, that as we sort of decarbonise our transport, that in turn will create many, many jobs.
Brilliant. Thanks, Elaine. Jamie or Nicola, you want to talk about government role, the role of government maybe?
I was going to come in actually and just I think from everything that I've been reading, the government are setting the scene incredibly well with many policies and interventions. It's now up to business. It's the business community that are going to shift and drive and take that on board, these policies, and make that happen. So the amount of new roles that are coming, and I think it's from SDS's, the sort of apart from the CSAP, they're looking at green roles as the new and emerging roles, completely new. The ones that the fuel cell technicians, the ones that are completely new. But you've also got the existing roles that need new skills, that upskilling. You've got your architects that need to change. You've got your construction, your scientists that are all slightly shifting into different ways. So there's a bit of different roles coming into there, but they're not completely new. And then you need absolutely more of the roles that we had before, the environmental lawyers, the plumbers, the people on the ground, because if they're ripping out all the systems, then you're going to need. So it's the businesses that need to look at what's coming and invest really heavily, and I see that happening more rapidly than I've ever seen. I would say pre-pandemic, I remember talking with the sustainable businesses with Circular Glasgow, but it was a small section of the business community. Now that's norm. It's not a separate. It's everybody has that agenda, and I can see everybody. And I think you're going to start to see many roles that are advertised that all have this round about it. So business at their core are the biggest change for the new roles coming, I would say.
Brilliant.
I can just add a different perspective too, is we've been doing quite a lot of work with Glasgow City Council, and I've been involved with Scottish Government's Clyde mission as well, where they're looking at natural spaces around Scotland and in the Glasgow City region, and looking at how do we regenerate vacant and derelict land to, you know, serve purposes for communities? How do we regenerate spaces around the Clyde and, you know, have nature-based solutions and things like that? And one of the things that kind of strikes me is that the sort of skills that you're going to need as well is skills where you can interface with communities, because a lot of the changes that we're going to see coming from government are really going to be these place-based approaches. And it's also going to be people who can do systems thinking. So thinking, you know, not only about what I know specifically about rivers and flooding, but how does that connect to some of the other sorts of issues in and around places such as fuel poverty and things like that. So really being able to start connecting up things and seeing how they interact with each other are going to be, it seems like kind of a strange skill maybe to think about, but it's really kind of a shift in mindsets that we're going to need to see people coming into these sorts of jobs in the future, I think.
Yeah, I think that's it, and I think you're right. I think that it's that, as I say, cognitive flexibility. People are going to have a mindset, but be adaptable and think about what's happening. And the rate of change, the only constant I think will be change, but that rate of change is increasing. So that ability to think and be curious and apply your thinking to different areas is going to become more and more important. We've got a question from Gordon Curry, who probably is no stranger to you, Jamie, certainly not to me. If it's the same Gordon Curry, which there's only one Gordon Curry. So going forward in universities, can and should sustainability be driven forward by and be emphasised in course development? So should we be putting sustainability in learning outcomes, graduate attributes, etc.? Should it be a bit more explicit? What do you think about that? Maybe so Jamie first, because you're...
Yeah, I can start out with that. One of the initiatives, so the center is kind of working around 3 different pillars in terms of how we're dealing with sustainability, which is research, education, and partnership. And on the education front, at our university, over the past year, we've been developing a community of practice around how we actually embed sustainability into the classroom. And it's looking at exactly those sorts of areas. What are, sorry, the learning outcomes that we need that are related to sustainability, and sustainability needs to be embedded in all of the different disciplines. I don't think there's a single discipline that you can look at that isn't in some way going to be linked to sustainability. So certainly we need to consider that in terms of graduate attributes and things like that. Even skills in terms of graduate attributes, in terms of being able to reflect on, you know, actions that you've taken, and, you know, how you can whether they've been successful, how you can build on things that weren't successful, use them as learning experiences and things like that, I think are going to be really important as we move forward with the sustainability agenda, because there's so many things that we don't know about what's going to work moving forward.
So a lot of trial and error there as well, for sure. Would Elaine or Nicola, do you want to say anything? I mean, Gordon's asked the question about universities, but maybe education in general. You've already alluded to quite a bit of what's been done in schools, Nicola, but do you think that education should be putting sustainability more obvious in learning outcomes and such like?
I think it'll be interweaved. Give it just a bit of time. It will become interweaved. It's now it's as needed as digital and data analysis. It's the same, so it will be interweaved, and it just takes a bit of time. But I don't think any educator would not want to do that.
Brilliant, Elaine.
Yeah, I can cover from an apprenticeship side. Certainly, we've been doing some work around that recently around the greening of apprenticeships. So there's no question as we move forward in terms of design, it will be absolutely embedded as that will go across every single subject in the same way as, you know, communication, digital data skills already do.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Gordon. And we've got another question from Isabel, who says, what opportunities can one take from a background of commercial sales? And sorry, as your question's a wee bit, I'll try and rephrase it. So if you've got a commercial or sales background, what opportunities can you take, and what steps could you take to try and forge out an environmental career path for yourself if you don't have that background at the moment, obviously, but you've got a commercial maybe background or sales? How could you move in and pivot into environment? Anybody like to answer that? Nicola?
I'm going to give you an example of a young woman that I have in my organisation that's now helping me run the education legacy piece. She was in commercial banking and moved away by doing small upskilling courses. It was her passion to move into it. The transferable skills and the skills that this lady has are absolutely are incredible to me and to any business. So it's taking the skills that you have gained in your career, and yes, to show an employer that you're really, really, I suppose, very keen and is the part of re-educating and upskilling yourself, which somebody else can come in. I'm not sure on that path, but those transferable skills, it's a change, but it's not a complete difference. Those skill sets are required anywhere. And when this lady came to, I couldn't believe I was getting somebody with that skill set that was coming to support one of my projects, and she's phenomenal. And for her, it's the best thing she's ever done. So I think for me, just don't forget your skill sets that you have. They're absolutely transferable into that world, and it's just finding the right role. But absolutely, the upskilling part, maybe somebody else would come in with that.
Excellent, thanks, Nicola. Yeah, anybody else come in with that?
I can just say briefly on the upskilling side of things, this is kind of a new program that's been launched from this Scottish Funding Council, at least for the University of Glasgow, or for Scotland anyway. If you're based in Scotland, you can actually take advantage of those SFC funds, and you can take these upskilling courses if you're based in Scotland for no fees. And essentially what they are they're 10 credit courses. And what we're looking at doing is establishing a framework so that you can either just come in and upskill in specific areas that you're interested in. So you can take just 10 credits here or 10 credits there. But what's becoming more common and what we're seeing from the students who are on these courses is they want to be able to stack them or build them in a way that they can either get a PG certificate out of it, or potentially you can use them as credits going into like a one-year master's or something like that. So it's a really nice opportunity with the Scottish Funding Council to be able to take them at no cost and kind of get an idea of whether it really is something that you're interested in. And then from there, you can look at the larger provision across the universities in Scotland and determine whether, changing your career path and actually maybe doing a master's or other sort of degree might be worth your while.
Brilliant, thanks, Jamie. I mean, I think, Elaine, were you wanting to say something there before I step in?
Again, it's very briefly to say that the opportunities, certainly in terms of this space, is going to go across every sector, and there's going to be opportunities in sectors and in areas that you're not aware of. So I think it is just taking that time to think a little bit more about what that would look like for you, and certainly building up a basic awareness around sort of whole climate emergency, climate literacy. That focus on digital data is a really good example of what will be essential cross-sector skills. There's so many areas where it would be no regrets in terms of building up knowledge, and if there's any certain specific areas that stand out, then having that conversation, speaking to careers advisors, speaking to experts to see how to slowly make that transition. But I think because it's going to be so all-encompassing, I think if you take any steps to move into that direction, you will get there.
That's brilliant. That's really encouraging. And it's just, I think, generally with this change, and with change being always constant and even increasing, I think that I would just say to everybody that's listening here today that you can probably do a lot more than you even think possible. And yes, if you dip into a 10 credit course, fantastic. You'll find out that, oh, I can do this. Oh, this is really interesting. And then pivoting is not difficult because the transferable skills are there, they're common. And you can, the biggest mistake you can make is undervaluing what you've already done and the skills that it's given you and how you've developed. But sorry, this isn't about me. I must stop now. It's not giving a talk. I'll shut up. Okay, next question from somebody who's not given their name. We've kind of looked at some of that already, but are there any, with regards to upskilling, I think that is, and ESG, are there any particular courses you would recommend to someone with corporate experience wanting to move into ESG? I think we've kind of covered that really, but that's fine. And there's another question: are the councils supporting large businesses, Glasgow-based, to encourage upskilling, transition into roles and that their studies are focused on, and if so, how? So I don't know if anybody's able to answer those. Maybe even look at those two together. So are there any particular courses that we haven't mentioned that you'd recommend to somebody wanting to move into ESG? And also, does everybody know what ESG is? What you mean by ESG? Would you like to maybe just put that in does anybody know what ESG is?
Okay, so that's what I had mentioned earlier, the environmental social governance.
Right. Okay.
At the moment, our upskilling courses aren't necessarily, they're geared towards people with corporate experience that can come in. There was another question, there's a tab there that says answered. Right. And I had typed in an answer and then the question disappeared, but I put in a link there just to a number of what are called micro-credentials or upskilling courses that the university offers. So in terms of particular courses, there's one that I'm involved with folks from the Adam Smith Business School, and it's looking at systems thinking, and we do come in a bit to environmental social governance. I think if you're specifically looking for executive education, there's some courses that we're thinking about developing, but we actually don't have running yet. But you might look at, I think Cambridge has an executive ed on systems thinking and ESG and thinking about that. So I'm not sure if that quite answers the question. It depends on what level you're kind of looking at. I don't know, Nicola, if you maybe know a little bit more about the large businesses in terms of the Glasgow base.
Yeah, so I think it's been mentioned before, because it's the same funding pot that sort of funds the upskilling courses. There's a huge amount of funding being given to cities to do upskilling in your own business through, I can't even remember the name, sorry, and we've just done it through the college. I can't remember.
It's fine.
Maybe Elaine, you'd remember as well. It does. It's joint. It's through the colleges, and every business can go, whether you're large or SME or medium. And you've got, so for us as an SME, the Chamber's an SME, we were entitled to £5,000 of funding to upskill our staff. I just can't remember the name.
Flexible Workforce Development Fund, is that?
Yes. So that's available for large businesses, medium and small businesses, and that's been quite transformational. So for us, for a small business with 40 staff, we are allowed £5,000, which we could actually allocate to upskilling. And it was a digital upskill last year because obviously of what happened, and we used some for sustainability as well. So that's available for all businesses in Glasgow, big, small or medium. And obviously a business can put some more funding into that as well. I would say have a look at them. And if there's nothing on the books that you really want as a business or you feel you need, that can be created through universities, colleges will create what a business needs to support the economic development of the city.
I can certainly say that too. As the director of the Centre for Sustainable Solutions, if there is something that you're specifically wanting an upskilling course in that you don't see offered, please get in touch, because we're bringing new courses online all the time, and we'd be happy to either co-develop a course with you or look into who around the university has the skills that could create that course. So please get in touch.
Fantastic. Thanks. Okay. I think we'll move down to Nicholas, who's asked, hi, Professor Jamie. I think this is one for you, Jamie, obviously. Where can we look into these courses? Is it on the Scottish Council website?
I put a link in the answered question, but what I'll do is I'll put it in the chat if more people can see it there. So maybe that would be helpful.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Thanks. Thanks for that. Okay, here's another interesting question from somebody who's graduating this year. I'm graduating this year from university with a degree in international relations. How can I get into this field of work with a sustainable environmental focus, but in Scotland? Well, like so many people who come to Scotland to do, international students, you want to stay, and who wouldn't? And we want to keep you if we possibly can as well. So welcome, and yeah, let's hope so. So anyway, so no pressure on anybody then. So how can this person get into this field of work with a master's in international relations, get into sort of sustainable type work, but in Scotland? Any advice or help?
I'm going to come in. It's the same as any graduate leaving university. It's going and having a look. There are loads of roles, very encouraging signs for the economy. I think you'll have seen that Rishi Sunak gave the Kickstart scheme for our young people to move them into 6 months placements. I would say it feels saturated now. So we've got 900 people in Glasgow in placements, and it's now very difficult to find somebody not working. So the amount of roles that are out there that are created, it seems a very healthy environment for the market within Scotland. And especially in these sectors that are now looking at moving and growing. And as I said at the start, your degree has absolutely given you some real transferable skills that every employer is looking for. And to put yourself into an organisation, and maybe the role doesn't start off that you're a sustainable expert, but that if the organisation is a sustainable, ethical business that you're attracted to, that you want to be part of, they will develop you into that. So I would say, look, as an employer is looking out the box, look out the box yourself for your work scope. That would be my advice.
Great advice. Would either of Jamie or Elaine want to speak to that at all?
I was just going to say that I think that sounds like really good advice. A lot of these roles are just opening up now, roles for sustainability champions and things like that. So I think the important thing is working for a company or working with people that you are really keen to work with and doing something that you enjoy. And as these, new roles start opening up, you can place yourself to, potentially take those on.
Yeah, I mean, a lot is just having the guts to look beyond. Sometimes people look at a job description and they see a skill or a quality, think, well, I don't really have that. Well, so what? You've got everything else. And with sustainability jobs as well, if there is, as we've just heard from our panelists, if there are more jobs than we've got people for, then that gives you an advantage. If you can go in and convince them that you've got the potential, you've got the transferable skills to be able to take that sustainability baton, if you like, and run with that with a bit of support from them, then that's all you need. And my advice would be to go for what you want and don't worry overly much about having to meet every single criterion in a job description. But that's just me. And I think that, I think that's good advice for anybody. And if I could be, I know it's dangerous because we've got 3 women here, but women tend to be a bit more reticent about applying for things if they don't think they've got every single thing the employer's asking for. That seems to be a statistic. Don't be limited by that. Go for it. If you really want to do it, go for it. Make a case for yourself. You've no idea where that could end up. Anyway, if you're worried about that, come and speak to a careers manager about any applications you're making. I was
going to say that. Seek support and advice when you're looking for your first role, and have somebody to reflect back to you your skills that you've found through your university life, but also outside. It's amazing. Met so many young people, as I say, doing this Kickstart scheme with a sort of bit of paper that didn't tell me who they were. But when you dug down, they're like, "Wow, oh yeah, of course I have. Yes, you've actually run a house. You've been caring for your sister. You've been doing that. You've been juggling loads of things. That's actually called multitasking. That forward thinking of you thinking that, and oh, okay. So people don't really recognise the skills that they've got because they haven't been in the workplace to see that. So I would recommend that you do work with an expert from careers. SDS as well have a huge suite of support for people to get that feedback, so you can walk in with an informed talk to your future employer.
And also as well, I mean, obviously, thanks for that, Nicola, because yeah, we need to get a bit of a boost here. But remember your academics as well. can help you too. And they've got a lot of really good links with industry too. So get talking to your friendly lecturers as well. And somebody said, you know, how can I over time gain a master's degree with sustainability while working in Scotland? I mean, that's a really good question. I mean, we've just heard a wee bit about how to begin doing that, maybe doing one of Jamie's centre's courses, but then there's part-time study, there's full-time study, and I'm not going to answer the question for our panelists because it's not about me, but what advice would you give to somebody who's thinking, well, I would actually like to get qualified or get some kind of master's in it as well? So what advice would you give them to how to do that while working in Scotland?
I would just advise to look across the universities and see what programs are offered. I think COVID's offered a lot of opportunities to how we actually teach online. And there's probably in the coming years and such a lot more flexibility in terms of how people can actually gain a degree as opposed to being, you know, full-time in a degree program where you wouldn't actually be able to work alongside of it. So I would look around, see what's interesting to you, and then get in touch with the universities and the course conveners and things like that, and find a way that you can, you know, do a part-time degree, because that's certainly possible.
Thanks, Jamie. Either Nick or Elaine want to speak to that?
I think if anything, my advice would be just start, because time goes, you know, it doesn't really matter if something's going to take 3 years, 8 years, or how slow. The important thing is that you just start now and move in that direction. I think if you've got an area that you're interested in, there's so much flexibility with how you get into it. And there's so many different opportunities there. So if you're moving and building a skill set, be that with, you know, whether it's important to have a master's or whether you're just building knowledge and experience in that area and doing some sort of, you know, studying any other way, all of it will count and all of it will help move you. But the important thing is that you just start slowly but surely moving in that direction.
Brilliant. Okay. I see that Alison has put in a plug for short online courses offered by the University of Edinburgh. I'm not sure if we can help you advertise them, Alison. I'm just kidding. It might be an idea to maybe just put it in the chat, as Jamie has done. If you could do that, put your link there, that would be fantastic, and people can see that. We've not got any other questions there just now, so I've got one I'd love to ask. You've already given me a hint into this, but can you give me any more practical and maybe in a bit more detail of a practical example of how sustainability is changing jobs in the workplace? You've already, Elaine, you've already kind of said that in construction, but if you can, just a practical example of how the workplace is changing in some sector, or maybe just an example of somebody you've met who's talked you through how they've had to change.
I suppose a practical example is now certainly for construction companies, most of them do have sustainable building managers or jobs that have varying titles, but there probably wouldn't have been that expertise and that focus on that job before. So for certainly for the larger companies, that job now exists. It's a real job for many people, and there's sort of people within companies whose 100% focus is around opportunities and is around the sort of environmental impact of construction and how to build more sustainably, but also how to make the most of opportunities and that will come that way in terms of policy and business opportunities. So there's lots and lots there, and I think certainly if you're in terms of careers, there's just not a shortage if you can go into any of the industries with the right background and skills. And I think innovation is going to dominate as well. I think we're into what will be a really interesting phase in terms of innovation, and innovation centre is a great example where they're starting to mainstream some sort of innovation products into the industry, probably at a much faster speed than would have happened before. So the time lag from a sort of the innovation to starting to be spoken about and taught across industries definitely shortened as well.
Great, thanks.
I was going to come in and sort of think about like how things are getting designed now, the designers and our manufacturing of the future and the different skills we're going to need, because the design now has to take into consideration the circularity, like to make sure this actually will last, it's sustainable, but it's going to last, to make sure that we're not. So those design of all, in every, I can't think of any industry now that's not going to need some sort of design to support it. That's kind of different. I think finance is really, really under talked about, and it's really important, because the more that we put the finance investments into the right place, and every business starts to do that, that's going to build the capital to shift everything else forward. So I think that's a really, that your procurement, your new sort of people coming into those roles, your lawyers, your finance are all going to have a different mindset of what we're doing, which will stimulate a huge sort of different supporting every other industry. That's some examples, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. Jamie, you've probably met hundreds of people in your courses that are doing things differently.
Yeah, everybody's trying to make changes in this area. We've had some people come through who run orchestras and looking at how they can change travel in terms of their orchestra, because normally the orchestra has to fly lots of different places to perform. I was thinking about all of the different shops and things that are popping up in and around Glasgow as well. One of my colleagues in the Adam Smith Business School, who studies the clothing industry and textiles and things like that, she would say that the most sustainable piece of clothing you have is the one that's already in your closet. But we're seeing there's a huge number of vintage shops popping up around and things like that, and actually giving value to things that otherwise you may have put in the bin or not really thought about before. And the people who are sort of innovating and finding ways to open these different kinds of enterprises. We also have sustainable food enterprises like Locavore that's popped up and doing really well around sustainable food and things. So I think if you have those ideas and things, there's really a market for that right now as well.
And then there's also, and the name escapes, there's the business that's looking at repairing things. You take something along and they repair it for you if they can. That's terrible. I read about it the other day. It's gone. The name's gone. But we've worked with them as well in the career service. And somebody has said there, are there some common industry partners with sustainable careers that U of G works with and students can possibly learn more about or apply for jobs with? I'm just going to take this myself to begin with, and then I'll let the panel come in. It's probably better to actually think, well, everybody's going to be taking sustainability more seriously. And if you look at some of the organisations that we've had at our fairs, our engineering fair, our tech fair, sustainability has been a theme this semester. And if you look at all of those organisations, you'll find that they've got opportunities that have got a focus on sustainability. All our vacancies, get onto our vacancy database. We've got thousands of vacancies on there, and hundreds every month, and we're back up to very near pre-COVID levels of vacancies, and particularly in this kind of area. So I would just say, keep looking at our vacancies. Don't throw our newsletter in your email bin every week. Have a look at it. There's lots of stuff there. And again, if you go onto lots of different websites like Prospects, etc., look up the job profile for sustainability manager or consultant, and you'll find lots of really useful links there for vacancy sources and all that kind of stuff as well. So there's no shortage of information if you just do a wee bit of digging and start with our website first, I would suggest, and you'll find lots of links from there. So that's a plug for us. And if you're from another university, get onto University Career Service, because they will have really good links with industry, lots of vacancies, etc. there. So yeah, so our panel, what do you think? Any common industry partners you can think of?
We're probably working just now with about, 200 to 300 businesses. And I would say, just to echo what you said there, it's about the business, their vision, where they're going. Speak to them. They will have different opportunities, for you to reach out to get experience. Volunteering is a very, very valuable part of coming in to learn, and that's available as well through many organisations. But I really think it is now follow the business that you're interested in, or the role or what you want to do. You might find yourself in a sector that you never thought you would, but doing a role that you really believe in.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, I've just looked at my watch. We're nearly out of time. We've got one last question there, and I've just looked at it and thought, well, that's a really good question. I think we'll finish on this one, because at Glasgow University we talk about producing world changers, and I think we've got one here who's asked this question. My country isn't giving much attention to sustainability, so as a student, how do we cultivate the sustainability awareness to our people? So how can we be ambassadors for for sustainability? What do you think, panel?
I can start out with that if you want. I think that's a really good question. Yeah. And I think I think countries need more people asking this kind of question. And the reality is what you really need to do is think about, you know, all of your connections and your networks. So you're an individual, you have influence over what happens at your household level. You probably have connections through your community and maybe your workplace. So I would start off small and have conversations, be communicating with, you know, the people that you have traction with, and start exchanging ideas and seeing if you can start bringing people along with you. If you have a particular community, for example, whether that is a religious community, whether it's a neighborhood, whatever that community is, just start conversations, start thinking about, you know, what are some of the actions that you might be able to take at a small level, because those tend to grow as soon as you start getting more and more people interested in those. So I would start small, but don't underestimate the impact that starting small can have, because you can have really good traction at the individual level and then moving on to the sort of community level.
Yeah, brilliant, Jamie. Nicola or Elaine, do you want to come in on that one? How can we affect change? How can we evangelise a country?
I think there's always showing, and this is, I agree with everything just said, but I also think there's more, whether it's more cynical side, but there's also showing the business opportunity with it. And certainly as we move in that direction, and there's going to be a lot more opportunities in business pivot that way, even going out into other countries, showing that it can be done and that there's still opportunities, and that businesses can still do what they need to do, but in a sustainable way and still in a way that is sort of cost effective, I think will help drive change. So building that understanding in your own particular sector and influencing right through whatever your sector is will in time make a difference.
Brilliant, thanks. Nicola, do you want to say anything to that?
I would just say change takes time, and with everything, I've experienced my own lifetime of looking at change within nothing as major as this, but small changes end up in big differences. So I would just take on board what you can do and keep going. And sometimes it takes 20 years, but that's I would advocate that you just keep going. I really like the idea of going into your community, really strong movements and groups of like-minded people. Find your people, and work alongside them, and that'll enhance your ability to move forward.
Brilliant, thanks, Nicola. Well, folks, that's 12:59, so I think we've come to the end of our hour. I would just like to really thank you for your questions, and I'd really like to thank our panel members who've given some really brilliant answers. I did have some questions prepared, and thankfully we've answered them all throughout our conversation, which is fantastic. I know that we can't do this because it's a webinar, but I'd like to give them a round of applause, and yourselves as well, for the questions. Thank you so much. There's a lot more going on. We've got our sustainability fair tomorrow for between 11 and 2, so come into that. And there's lots of other events that we're putting on at Glasgow, and also all the other universities as well for this week, which is fantastic. And of course, COP26 is running. But this is the future, folks. There's going to be opportunities, growing opportunities. And I think that our three panelists have given us a really good feel for the fact that those opportunities are growing, and that there's no reason for you not to feel as if you can't access those opportunities and make that career that's fulfilling for you, but also changes the world and hopefully solves this massive problem that we have as well. So thank you very much for joining us, and we'll just say cheerio just now and see you again soon. Bye for now.